Burkina Faso, formerly known as the Upper River Volta, was a French colony. Its borders drawn not by geography or ethnicity, but by colonial ambition. Since gaining independence in 1960, it has faced relentless struggles, poverty, military coups, foreign intervention, and the looting of its vast resources. Rich in gold and other minerals, the wealth of Burkina Faso never stayed within its borders. Instead, it flew outwards to Paris, to multinational corporations, to distant market where the name Burkina Faso meant little more than a signature on the export license. The people, however, remembered one man, the man who dared to break the chain, Thomas Sankara. In just few years, during 1980s, Thomas Sankara transformed the country, championing women's rights, self-sufficiency, and the end of neocolonialism. It was alleged that Thomas Sankara's closest ally, Blaise Compaoré, received support from Western powers to orchestrate his assassination in 1987, who then ruled for 27 years. From Cote d'Ivoire to Senegal, Mali to Niger, West African nations have struggled under similar shadows. Post-independence leaders trained in France, loyal to France, enriched by France. But something began to change in the recent years. In Mali and Niger, in Guinea and Chad, young officers began to rise, challenging the old orders, emboldened by the failures of the West-backed governance, and backed by people who were tired of begging for sustainability, stability from foreign hands. And in this storm of rebellion, one name rose: Ibrahim Traoré. Born in 1988 in Bondoku, a small town in West Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré grew up in a country haunted by Sankara's ghost and shackled by Compaoré's grip. It was a time of authoritarianism masked as democracy and poverty masked as peace. As a child, Traoré watched the country's wealth shipped overseas while his own people suffered. He was curious and observant. He studied geology at the University of Ouagadougou, learning about the land even as it was stripped by foreign corporations. In 2010, he joined the army. From the beginning, he was different, committed, focused, and popular among his peers. He trained extensively and was deployed to Mali under the UN peacekeeping mission, gaining critical experience fighting in the Sahel region. By the 2020s, Burkina Faso was falling apart. Entire province fell to armed groups. The fighting killed thousands and many more millions of civilians were displaced. The state was collapsing and the people no longer believed their leaders could stop these ongoing fights between the Islamist groups and the military. President Roch Marc Kabore, elected on the promise of security, failed to control the continuous chaos. The army was underfunded and under-equipped, and frustration grew. In January 2022, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Damiba staged a coup and seized power. He promised a new era. But the new president, Damiba, fell into the old patterns. He stayed in capital while soldiers died in remote ambushes. He clung on to the ties with France and continued the old ways of previous presidents. For many years, it felt like the same play with a new actor. Then came a breaking point. On September 30th, 2022, Ibrahim Traoré, who was then a captain, led a revolt to take down Damiba and his French allies. At just 34 years old, Traoré became the youngest head of state in the world, the same age Sankara had been when he took power. Crowds flooded the streets of Ouagadougou. Posters of Traoré appeared next to Sankara's. In the eyes of people, this was not just a coup, it was a resurrection, a second chance to free the country from the grip on France. Traoré's first speech were full of strong feelings and love for his country. He said the country has been let down and depended too much on others. He promised to bring change, but the way forward was very dangerous, as he would soon come to realize. Just days after Captain Traoré took over power in Burkina Faso, he showed that he wanted to take back control of the country's wealth from the West and keep it within Burkina Faso. He removed French soldiers, shut down French army bases, and said that Burkina Faso would no longer be controlled by others. At the same time, similar feelings were growing in other Sahel countries like Mali and Niger. In Mali, the army had already taken over and told French troops to leave, blaming them for not stopping attacks that are going on in the country. In Niger, the army took over power in 2023 and pushed out the French. These countries believed that the French were not really helping and were still trying to control things in their country. The three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, joined together to form the Alliance of Sahel States. This was their way of saying no to ECOWAS, the West, and the old system that had kept them poor and weak. They said they wanted to work together and make their own decision without outside influence. Instead of working with France, Traoré turned to Russia. There were reports that soldiers from the Russian Wagner group were helping Burkina Faso's army. Some people said this was just a new kind of foreign control, but Traoré's supporters said it was the only way to survive the fight back against their newfound freedom. French reacted strongly. They denied that they failed in the region and said the military leaders were making a big mistake. France warned that working with Russia could bring more problems. In response, France stopped giving military help and money to these countries. But the Sahel leaders did not change their minds. They said their people had suffered far too long and it was time to stand on their own. Traoré often talked about freedom from foreign controls and letting young people lead the way. He wore military uniform and spoke in a clear, honest way, which was very different from the older leaders in suit who followed Western style. On state TV, he was shown as the next Thomas Sankara, a hero for the people. But behind the strong image, he carried many heavy responsibilities. And just when the world thought they figured him out, something unexpected happened. Something that would shock his supporters, worry his critics, and change the game once again. While many people were focused on Traoré's strong speeches and military actions, he was busy working on rebuilding his country. He brought in new farming equipments like tractors, helping local farmers to grow more food. Roads that have been broken for years were being fixed and building new ones, making it easier for people and goods to move around in the country. Surprisingly, electrical vehicle companies also started to grow. Local businesses began building electric cars and bikes using solar power. One company became popular for creating clean, affordable transportation made in Burkina Faso. Because of these changes, people across other African countries began to take interest. Some came to visit, others thought of moving there. They saw Burkina Faso as a country trying to build a better future on its own, without waiting for help from the West. Burkina Faso was once seen as poor and unstable. Now it's been seen as a place of hope and a new beginning. The fight in Burkina Faso is far from over. Attacks by armed groups continue across the country, especially in the rural areas. In response, Traore increased the size of the military, gave weapons to local defense groups, and sent more resources to protect the villages. But this also brought new problems. Some young men were forced to join the army. Civilians were treated harshly in some places, and concerns about human rights started to grow. Some journalists were arrested. People who spoke against the government were silenced. Many began to wonder, in trying to save the country, was Traore becoming the opposite of what he had promised? Many believe that these anti-government groups and journalists were used by the West to bring down Traore and distract him from his development goals. Many people in Burkina Faso and Africans around the world still believe in him. They didn't see him as faraway president in suit. They saw him as one of them. He visited soldiers in the front line, listened to their stories, and stood with them. His strong, simple way of speaking and his willingness to be on the ground gave people hope that he still cared deeply. But more questions started to rise. Election has been promised, but when? He spoke of democracy, but what would that look like? Still, many across Africa believe that force might be the only way to truly change things in Africa. They said the West became rich and powerful through force, through slavery, colonization, and wars. Compared to that history, they argued that African leaders like Traore were doing nothing as compared to what the West did to get to where they are now. Some felt that Africa had to go through its own tough journey to reach real freedom and development, just as others had done. As the pressure grew and even attempts were made on his life, Traore made a bold decision. He visited the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, seeking stronger support and new partnership. It was a powerful message to the world. He was not giving up, and he was ready for whatever came next. And what followed would surprise everyone. As Traore returns from his visit to Russia, eyes across the world were watching. But this wasn't just about one man or one country. Something bigger was happening.
The African nation of Burkina Faso.
There are reports that 200 soldiers have been killed in attacks by...
Across West Africa, more and more soldiers were rising to power. Just like Traore, this showed a deeper crisis. People were losing faith. Faith in the promises of past colonial democracy. Faith in global institutions like United Nations or the African Union. Faith in old partnership with the West that, for many, had brought little changes. In country after country, citizens were saying, enough is enough. They were tired of elections that didn't bring real leadership, tired of leaders who listened more to foreign powers than to their own people. In their eyes, the system was broken, and soldiers like Traore were stepping in to fix it by force if necessary. But Traore's story is far from over. He rules a country full of pain and hope, a land torn by years of conflicts, struggling to rise again. Enemies still attack from outside, but perhaps the bigger fight is inside, against fear, division, and the pressure to hold power at any cost. He has lit fire in the hearts of many young Africans who see him as a symbol of courage, strength, and change. But he had also worried others, those who feared that his path could lead to more violence, more oppression, and another broken promises. He has rejected the West and opened the doors for new powers like Russia. Some see this as smart, others see danger. But one thing is certain, he has made the world pay attention. Now the question hangs in the air like a storm waiting to break. Is Traore truly a heir of Thomas Sankara, the bold young leader who once dreamed of an African revolution? Or is he just another man in the long list of strong men who rose, rule, and fell? Will he break the cycle, or will the cycle break him? Only time and the choices he makes will write the final chapters. This is his story. If you enjoyed this video, you'll also like this one. Click here to watch it.